Welcome back, everybody, to the latest edition of the NASCHAT podcast, brought to you by National Autograss Sport Association Limited and fueled by Monster Energy. As usual, we've got on board our corporate partners, RPE Leisure Group, Cobra Coatings, KS Coles and the Wellington Business Park. We've got DH Alleyworks, DM Design and Fabrication, and of course Monster Energy. I've got a guy in today, pretty prolific racer, been around a few years now, still a relative newbie, but he's been around a few years now, raced in other formulas before his heart brought him back to National Autograss racing. Let me introduce you to the 7 times Class 7 national champion, Andy Holtby.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, young man. Not dissimilar to a few people that we've interviewed already on this podcast. You started your life as a National Autograss family member, not so much a racer. You didn't have a junior career here in National Autograss. Your racing career started over in National Hot Rods.
Yeah.
But obviously prior to that, Dad Mike had been a Class 7 national champion. Somebody obviously I watched as a young lad before you were born. You went away, you did your National Hot Rods for many years. What was it that brought you back? What dragged you back here?
I'd always followed it a little bit, but then my mum and dad obviously still were coming and watching when they finished racing, and it was 2010 Severn Valley Nationals. They said, "Oh, we're going to go watch. Do you want to come?" And I was like, didn't have anything else going on, so I was like, "Yeah, we'll come and have a watch." And I still remember it. I watched that Class 7 final and said, "I want a bit of this."
Do you remember me not winning the Class 8 final?
Yeah.
Me too.
My friend Mark Clayton.
It cost me twice. So obviously from that was August 2010. And by 2011, you was among it. You opted for Class 7. The first car was a twin-engine mini pickup, but with the Gix 1000 route, which was actually right in fashion at that point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You started there. What was your first season like as an introduction, coming back from National Hot Rods? Obviously, when you was a young kid, you was at National Autograss, but it was very different in them days.
Yeah.
So when you came back, your introduction to Autograss, how did you find that?
Not very good, to be fair. When we first started, I didn't really get the rules and regs that much. I don't think I was probably welcomed that much. Well, not by some people. But once we had a go, when we got into it and got some teething problems out of the way, it was good.
It did seem a little bit awkward at the beginning. It was almost like people knew who you were because you were Mike Holtby's boy, and Mike was a very well thought of guy and a Class 7 national champion in his own right. And it was like, this guy from National Hot Rods has come in, Andy Holtby's come in, welcome to Autograss, and then you're not welcome at Autograss. It felt a bit like that, didn't it?
It definitely did, yeah.
What did you do to overcome that?
I think we just persevered. We just carried on until it made us smile, really, and that wasn't long. That wasn't long at all, because at that time I still had my National Hot Rod, and I've raced them both, and then only after probably a couple of grassing meetings, I decided that I was staying, and the National Hot Rod sold.
Yeah, and that was it with the stadium job.
That was it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've ever been back. Maybe once or twice to watch, but
never fancied it.
Never fancied it.
On this podcast, we've interviewed another guy that came from a different Formula Stadium racing. One of your friends, quite well known, Dan Johnson, obviously came over from stock cars. We spoke quite, at length in relation to the different environment. Now, I would imagine the National Hot Rod environment's quite different to the stock car environment anyway. But what was the big difference between where you were and when you arrived at Grass? Yes, it was something that you knew from your childhood, but it's quite a different environment. When you arrived in 2011, I believe National Autograss was thriving. It was like in its heyday.
Yeah.
What was the difference in the environments?
Well, the stadium racing was a lot of night racing, so a lot of Saturday night racing, as whereas obviously the grassing's more weekend, more family orientated. The stadium stuff wasn't family orientated, I didn't think.
No.
Not at all. And you needed a good team of lads to go with you, which you should struggle with as well.
Yeah.
The grassing's a lot simpler. You can go with your family.
Yeah.
Everybody's always going to help you when you're there. Stadium racing's not like that.
That's something that's been mentioned throughout this series of podcasts. So 4, 5 guests, and everybody keeps unprompted. They go straight to that and they go, people always help me. You know what I mean? And like, I've seen it firsthand. I've been that guy that's given the help. I've been a guy that's received help. Do you know what I mean? When it's been in a box of bits. That is, it's got to be different from just about any other environment. I mean, I remember when I, sort of had my little flurry on the stadium when I was racing the modifieds, and my family stopped coming. To say it wasn't a family environment, I did half a season, and my family disliked it so much. I mean, Evie was only a baby then, but my family disliked it so much that the wife and kids stayed at home, and it was just me and Steph. And Steph loves the stadium because Steph has, has been my mechanic for many years, came from that background. He was actually a mechanic in Formula One stock cars for many years. So he loves it. I spoke at length with, Dan about this. It never made me comfortable. I don't think it was safe. I just didn't feel, like safe.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, yeah.
So for you coming back, obviously it was a little bit awkward at the beginning. It was made a little bit awkward technically because I do remember the rigmarole with the car. So we was asked to present the car at the NEC Motorsport show. Yeah. We turned it out and she was pretty. Everybody loved it. And there was no comments made on the car in relation to its legality or anything like that until the season started. And then it started, didn't it?
All hell broke loose.
And I think was the car 3 or 4 meetings old before we even actually got to race it?
Yeah. The first time at Yorkshire Dales, I didn't even get through scrutineering. It was just point blank, you're not racing it.
Yeah. And I remember that quite clearly because I remember being involved in that conversation, and actually the scrutineer on the day said the car's fine to the rules, but he was taking telephone calls from somebody further up the chain who was telling him that car is not racing.
Yeah.
But he hadn't taken the time to actually physically examine it, had he?
No. And that was the time that we'd raced Saturday night at Ipswich with the hot rod as well.
Yeah.
So we didn't even get back till probably 4 a.m. and then jumped in and went to Dales and
got told no
and thought,
Because I remember, you might remember it more clearly than me because, it was happening to you. I was involved, but it was happening in real time. I seem to remember we made some alterations to the car that we was told to make. And then after we made the alterations to the letter, was then told it was wrong. And we ended up presenting the car back exactly how it started. And then it was allowed to race, and you raced it for 2 seasons?
Yeah.
In the same guys?
Yeah.
So a couple of seasons, inception seasons, and you was showing good pace. Then you went Hayabusa power. So it was the same chassis, but engine transplant. And then the job changed for you.
Yeah.
So that would have been 2013?
2013, start of 2013.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about 2013.
2013, we went to Boosers, and like you say, from the off it was fast. Made a few changes to it, just wheelbases and stuff like that, just to make it, just fine tune it, and and then turned up at nationals, and although it rained, it did the job.
She was on.
Yeah, she won. I think it won every race. It was good.
So we've spoken earlier in this series. We've spoken to Tom Page, who's from your league, so you'll be quite familiar with Tom anyway. Tom was one of the early campaigners with the twin Hayabusa Mini. It was a Riley Elf, and I believe that car of yours was probably the first of the twin Hayabusa pickups. I can't think of another one. I think they was all on thousands, weren't they?
Yeah. I think it was the first pickup, yeah.
And then that went, so obviously you went out 2013. That would have been Severn Valley.
Yeah.
So would that have been the last visit to Severn Valley?
No, we raced there 2015 nationals.
2015.
Yeah.
So then you ran that one out for a year. new chassis, sort of started a new relationship, twin Hayabusas with the XC Works chassis, different shock manufacturer as well, so quite big changes. Progressed through that. So where you are now, so from 2011, and here we are, 14 years later, 7 Class 7 national titles, couple of BAS titles.
4, I think of them.
Just the 4? Yeah. So 11 major titles out of 11 seasons in Autograss. That's not a bad stat.
No.
Considering, you're still a relative newbie compared to everybody else. Everybody else we speak to on this podcast been here for life. So you came back from the stadium, you made the transition, you enjoyed it. Since then, quite a lot's changed. When me and you first met, you had a very, very young family. Since then, the boys have started racing. So they both started. Troy, I believe, would have been 12 because he would have missed out on the rule change.
Yeah.
And then Max, who was 2 years behind him, took advantage of the rule change and started at 10.
Yeah.
So they've both had a career in junior specials. Did that have any effect on your racing? Did you find that a good distraction or a bad distraction or no distraction?
I don't think it affected me. Maybe a bit of a distraction. It didn't affect how I was going. A lot more hard work, without any doubt. A lot more hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it distracted me at all. I think I probably looked at the track more than what I normally do.
Than you would have. Yeah. Looking for differences in it that would affect them, right? And, that would have actually played into your hands, with the track knowledge. So obviously the twin busser thing, you stuck with that for a few years. Then you made the change and you went to the RPE V8, what started its life as the Powertec V8, later changed to the RPE V8 as RPE V8 because they had a management buyout. What did you have with that? A couple of seasons, 3 seasons with that?
I probably had 3 or 4 seasons with that, I think, in a couple of different chassis.
Yeah.
And to be fair, a couple of different CC variants and stuff, but still with that V8 package.
Yeah.
Yeah, we messed around quite a lot with that, to be fair.
Yeah. And obviously relatively decent success. So what did the V8 bring? A brace, a nationals, 2 more national titles?
Yeah, 2, yeah. 2, yeah.
So Evesham and Cumdee?
Yeah.
So again, for you guys at home, a little bit of a technical insight. Company way back in 2005 called Powertec, ran by a guy called Ted Hurrell. Actually, his real name's David. I don't know why we call him Ted. And Ted one day decided to get a pen and paper out and take some drawings of a standard Suzuki Hayabusa, which is actually a road motorcycle engine. And he drew it, 2 of them joined together. Obviously, there's a lot of people doing twin engine configuration, actually a front engine and a back engine. Ted sort of redesigned the wheel, basically made a crankcase, glued these 2 Hayabusas together and made what is now quite fondly known as the RPE V8, but it was the Powertec V8 back then. It wasn't without its teething troubles, it's fair to say. I had quite a healthy involvement with it in 2006, and I actually ran one myself, which seems like, well, it is 19 years ago, and the engine still seems relatively new. Back then, I was kind of helping Ted through development. When I say that, what I actually mean was I was helping him spend all of the company's money to try and make this engine reliable. And I'm not sure I actually helped, but I did break quite a few. But it was a fantastic season. So they basically made an 84 kilogram, 2.7 cc, 11,000 RPM V8 motorcycle engine. And I used it to good success. So I managed to bag myself a BAS and a British Autograss Series championship and a national championships with it back in 2006 in the back of an open wheeler. But nobody had actually put it in a saloon, had they? Or certainly had no success with it in a saloon.
No.
You grabbed hold of it. The first version of the chassis looked a little bit odd. You tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we didn't. it did look a bit odd, to be fair. The engine was really high in the back, and it was just a bit of the unknown, really. So once I raced that, it was fast, but I knew it could be a lot faster than that. And I think I persevered with that for 2 seasons before I changed it into a different chassis.
But it is fair to say that you did win a national title.
Yeah.
With the first version.
I did. The first year that it come out. Yeah.
And am I right in thinking that you tried a few CC variations with that as well, didn't you? And so different levels of tuning.
I did. Yeah.
And fly-by-wire.
And fly-by-wire. Yeah. I went through a fair few variants with that. Yeah.
And where did the fly-by-wire end up?
In the bin.
Yeah. Best place for it. So back on throttle cables and a linkage, and I know that's something that when I started with the V8, they'd never ran one on throttle bodies. So back then, it was a bit like an intake plenum with a single 3-4 inch throttle body on it. It was horrid. It was like you couldn't even drive it slowly. Horrid. And we grafted on mine, particularly because mine was Generation 1. I believe yours was Generation 2 motors. So again, guys, another little technical insight. The Hayabusa first came out in 1999. The first version of it ran till the end of 01. They did what I actually call a Generation 2. From 2002 to 2007, ironically, those 2 generations were both called the Generation 1.
Yeah.
In 2008, Suzuki brought a new version and they altered the CCs and they made, so the actual true Generation 2 was born, and it was 1340 cc. It had different cylinder heads, different stroke on the crankshaft. The bore size was the same, but there's a lot of trick bits inside. Windage in the barrels, titanium valve gear, loads of little trick bits, even an uprated standard gearbox shaft, which, as you'll know and I'll both know, the early gearbox shafts in Hayabusas was only made of cheese strings. Yeah. So they used to snap for fun. By the time they'd got to the Generation 2 in 2008, Suzuki had actually made a gearbox shaft that was fit for purpose for racing. But I think they actually knew, even though they were still producing the Hayabusas, and they still are, they're on the Gen 3 now, I think they knew that a lot of them motors was destined for cars. I would say that if you put a statistic to it, probably 80% of the Hayabusas produced have ended up in cars.
Yeah.
And I know that Radical Sports Cars, who was the outright owner of RPE and Powertec after the buyout, they was buying brand new engines straight from Suzuki that had never been fitted to bikes, bare motors, and breaking them to make what you know as your V8. So the Generation 2, my 2006 motor, which was a 2.6, was based on the 1300 cc's. Yours was a 2.7 based on the Generation 2s. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it did start as a 2.6. It was a bit of a hybrid, the first one.
Right.
And then I've soon moved to 2.7, yeah.
So you went on the longer crank.
Yeah.
And am I right in thinking you tried it at 3 litre or 2.8?
I went 3 litre.
Yeah.
I went 3 litre with all the bells and whistles, and yeah, I couldn't get on with that, to be fair.
No. Too fiery, or?
Yeah, just snappy like a switch. I probably didn't give it enough time, but because I'd already run the 2.7, I knew how good that was. Felt like I took a backward step.
Yeah.
Going to the 3 litre.
Was that a winter transition, or was that a mid-season thing?
That was a winter transition.
So you'd gone from the 2.6 to the 3 litre over the winter?
Yes. And then I run the 3 litre probably only into early season before I did have a little problem with the engine and it went back, and then they lent me a 2.7 to put in while that was gone. And it was just night and day better straight away. Yeah, I did keep it. Yeah,
yeah, we'll keep that.
Yeah.
So obviously, what they were doing, guys, with the V8, they were messing with bore and stroke configuration, but also in the meantime, with engine builders, if you're going to alter the stroke and you're going to alter the bore, well, you might as well raise the compression. So while we're in the process, why don't we put some bigger cams in?
Yeah.
And we'll make it completely undrivable.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it got a little bit lost.
It did, yeah.
And I know myself, mine was a literally bog standard 2.6 with Gen 1 Hayabusa throttle bodies on. So it only had 8 injectors, 1 per cylinder.
Yeah.
My own throttle linkage. Mine was super simple. Mine was on a little tiny MBE. So it didn't have data logging, didn't have a dashboard. Mine was just basically a kill switch and a button. Yeah, I blew it up a few times. But them early ones, and I think your first one suffered this when there was having oil pump issues with the scavenge pump on the dry sump, wasn't they?
Yeah.
So again, guys, another little technical bit. Rather than run the oil in the actual engine on a Hayabusa V8, RPV8 to give it its correct term, it's dry sumped. So the engine oil is in a tank and the oil is pumped into the engine from the tank. It circulates around the engine and then it's basically hoovered out the sump back into the tank. So the engine actually contains no oil. And I think part of the issue was that it was like a multi-bank scavenge pump and it used to lose a bank and then the next bank. But if it broke in the wrong place, it didn't pump oil at all. So it used to leave all the oil in the engine, which meant it couldn't generate any oil pressure. And I think Liam Duran's using the RPE V8 in one of his cars, isn't he? I think he's been suffering a similar issue. So obviously the RPE V8 car, 2 seasons with the Hunchback. Then you had a massive change around and dropped the engine to the point where you couldn't see it. It looked like it never had an engine in, and it was lowered the center of gravity, more crossweight, I would imagine, because the engine was a bit over to the right. And I reckon you'd have probably took a hunk of weight out of that thing, did you?
I did, yeah.
So then you went on to win another national title with that car and a British title with that car.
Yeah.
So that one was a success story. The national final, I remember with that one, down at Cumdee. So Cumdee Autograss Club is based down at in the Hereford Hills, Lionshall.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny little place, but actually the venue is in the middle of the woods in this beautiful little quaint village, and it's like an amphitheater, isn't it? You're up on the banks watching down. You get a great view of the racing, really fast. And even when it's wet, and I don't mean raining wet, they keep the track wet because the dust hangs in the little amphitheater, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when they wet it, it doesn't get any slower.
No.
It's just mega, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now that final in particular was an absolute royal tear up, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And you didn't win that one easy. Tell us a little bit about that.
So that one, that one I ended up I think I was down the order for grid pick. So I ended up in a gate that I didn't really want to be in.
Again, if I just put in, I'll just explain to the guys at home. Obviously, you Grassham fans, you Avid fans, you know the sketch with this. But you guys out on the fringe, looking to know a little bit more, when we do the big events like the British Autograss Series or the National Championships, we do seeded grid picking. So basically, our grids are picked for us via computer through the heats at the British Autograss Series. At the Nationals, we still draw random out of a bag, don't we?
Yeah.
So we ball pick out of a bag. Simple as that. 8 balls in a bag. Hard luck, mate. When it comes to the final, the top qualifier gets to verbally pick his grid based on his seeded position. So if you really favour the inside gate or you really favour the outside gate, you need to put the best qualifying runs in to make sure you're the top point scorer, because I will guarantee you now, if grid 8's shit and you got pick 8, you're going in grid 8, aren't you? And some days you can roll in and know it's over, can't you? Like, definitely. You never give up. You never give up, but it can be over.
Yeah.
So back to Cumdee, bad grid pick.
Didn't gate, or I think I maybe initially did gate, but then I wheeled because the engine was so high out the back and it used to like wheeling. And I come out the corner, I was last. I was stone dead last. But I'd already been watching the track and I already knew it was coming tighter and tighter and tighter. A lot of local lads were still running very wide, very fast, but you got to be going got to be going so much faster.
I think we touched on Cumdee with one of our earlier podcasts, and I remember my experience of Cumdee is it's one of them tracks where, like you say, the local guys will run the and I remember the first time I visited the place thinking, oh, they're all mental down here. Like, they were literally running the Armco, but by the finals, it always goes back to the tyres. And it's almost like, again, we've touched on this, the guys with the sort of the slicker track knowledge tends to be from up north. And I just tend to think those tracks favour us a little bit. You know, when it comes to the big event at the end and you've got to drop back and cut back for the exits.
A bit more technical, isn't it?
Yeah. So you go down there and watch the heats. And I think we did talk about this in an earlier episode. And I remember watching the young guys, you know, they were young compared to me, Dan Thomas and Cameron Mills and them Class 8 boys. And I remember thinking I might as well go home.
Yeah.
They were so fast in Heat 1.
Yeah.
and then
yeah,
it all edges back.
Well, I was paired with Cameron that weekend.
Yeah,
he beat me in every heat.
Yeah,
every heat.
So that's a tough final, knowing you're going in there with somebody that you haven't beaten yet.
Yeah.
And Cameron, of course, has gone on to win. Back then, he hadn't won. He had won in Class 8, but he had never won a Class 7 national title, and it was obviously crazy important to him to win one. They were putting a lot of effort in.
Yeah.
And since then, he's won 2.
Yeah.
So again, let's go back to the race. She rocked a wheelie.
Yeah, she rocked a wheelie. Come out the corner last, and I think I just got my head down. I was passing him like they were stood still, to be fair, but running tight.
Yeah.
And then I nearly got to the front, and then I did go to the outside then, but not crazy wide, but enough to trap them on the very slick inside,
to force them back,
to keep them to the inside.
Yeah.
And just took a run on the outside, and in a car that I don't think handled that well.
It all seemed a bit lethargic. Like it seemed like it would do it all, but it did it all slowly.
Yes.
So if once you got it turned, you've got to wait a while.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's how it looks.
Yeah.
Obviously, I never drove it.
Yeah.
But am I right in remembering that you only sort of took the lead like with a lap to go or whatever? It was a tight run thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 laps to go.
Yeah.
I got to the front, and then I dropped back to the inside then, and just only held 1 lap on the inside.
Just fended them off.
Yeah. And then, to be fair, Cameron was all over me, but I never left the tyres for that last lap on the inside.
Yeah. I think in that scenario, when you clamp down to the inside, you know there's no one coming. It makes you feel safer. And if someone appears on the outside, you only have to throttle up and take them to the dirt anyway, don't you? You don't have to run into them. I don't mean it in a but you can just run them out of space and then steal it back, can't you? So it's always a safer last lap, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, there is always the reality that you might get mugged, but more often than not, when you clamp down like that, people tend to follow you down anyway, because nobody will take that punt, will they?
That's right.
So the RPE V8 car, 4 seasons. You had decent reliability out of it.
Yeah.
I think, as we've already touched on, you had issues with the big version of it and the fly-by-wire.
Yeah.
That was shit. Then you did a full, let's scrap the lot. Let's scrap the last 4 years. Sold the car. The car went down to the Midland League.
Yeah.
Midland Autograss Promotion League. So that, again, guys, Midland Autograss Promotions, they have run 2 clubs. They got one at a little place called Radford, which is just on the cusp of Worcestershire. And then they've got the Evesham Club, which is, they're like brother and sister club, really, aren't they? Stratford-on-Avon, great venue.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of, I'm not even sure that the thing that attracts us to Evesham is the track. I think the Friday pub crawl is always pretty cool. That gets us there. There used to be a Chicago Rocks. But everybody sort of makes that trek to the Map Open at Evesham and Radford, because they share it, don't they?
Yeah.
But they make that because Stratford-on-Avon is just such a beautiful place,
and it's
isn't
a
it?
good family place as well.
So we all tend to get down there, go a day early, down to the Midland Autograss Promotions, because we like the environment. It's a nice wind down before what is potentially one of the hardest meetings to win.
Yeah.
Now, the Map Open for me, it was like a 17-year endeavour to win the Nationals. I think I was second 7 times to the same guy. It was driving me mad. And I remember one year, he'd beat me that many times. Ray Savage, great racer. St. Neots driver, really cool, really smooth. Even Jump Ship came to one of my cars and beat me in the chassis I built him, which made me even madder. And he kept beating me out of gate 1. So this last year, I'm like, draws up, pulls ball 1. Well, you're in trouble now, Ray. He was over in 8. Makes an absolute blinder, looks across, raised 4 cars out on me changing gear, absolutely dusted me from gate 8 as well. I could not beat the man. And I never beat Ray Savage in the map when I eventually got to win it, and I won it back to back. And it was one of those meetings, a bit like, not quite the prestige of the Nationals, of course. Certainly up there with winning a Bass round.
Yeah.
But the fastest man on grass held that level of prestige. For me, they was the two I really wanted to win. Yes, of course, the Nationals, but we'd been fortunate enough to do that. And once you have, like you have now, and you've got 7 titles under your belt, you start looking at the others, don't you? Like, wow, I need to win the map, and I need to win the West Midland, and I need to win here. You know, even like the Cumdy Cash Chaos has become not only because of the old...
Yeah, bit of wedge.
Yeah, a bit of wedge. We spent all... When I won it 2 years ago, we spent it all on a Chinese that night. I actually lost 16 quid on the day. But that's turned into a great event, and it's one of them to add to your sort of bucket list.
Yeah.
Going on to that, moving on a little bit before we go into the Chevy, what meetings are left now that you haven't won when it comes to the majors? What haven't you won?
Well, I've never won fastest man on grass overall.
Okay.
I've won the saloon bit.
Yeah.
I've won map a few times. I've done the Cash Chaos.
North of England?
Yeah, I've done that a few times. Yeah.
Because that's back on the rise, isn't it? Because it fell away.
And in the early days, it was hard to win.
It was a hard meeting to win.
Even though there was just a lot of northern cars there.
The hardest part about the North of England is that it's a Sunday, Monday. We all know that there's a big meeting in 4 days' time. Yeah. So you're a little bit protective.
Yeah.
And then we get sunburnt on Saturday, and it always rains on Bank Holiday Sunday. So you get there, you've done all the preparation in the world. You're like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
You're in trouble. And then Monday it dries up. But then the nature of York's track, and this is not a derogatory thing, it's suffered so much weather on Sunday that by Monday, it's like a bumpy, part grippy, part shiny, technical nightmare.
Yeah.
There's no right tyre pressure. There's no right shock settings. It really is a lottery, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a difficult one to win. But the one thing, just going the last 2-3 years, it's really back on the incline from a the perspective of getting people there, because it had fell away. It had become like almost insignificant without being disrespectful to it.
Yeah.
And York Autograss Club, which is located on the A59 between sort of York and Harrogate. It's a great little venue. Anybody on here watching this that's local that likes Autograss, they run probably, 7-8 meetings a year. Yeah. Their national qualifying is always good to watch because they've got some really quick cars, and obviously they host White Rose as well as part of their league, so they've got 2 clubs trying to qualify, haven't they?
Yeah.
So you've pretty much, apart from the fastest man on grass, you've knobbed them all. I think it's a big ask. The fastest man on grass again is climbing. It's back to 200 cars. I mean, it was 500.
Yeah.
But it went down to 80.
Yeah.
It's back at 200 cars. I think it's always going to be a big ask to win that now in a super saloon. You can, and it has been done, but I think it's very much dependent on who turns up. If all of a sudden there's 5 good Class 8s, it only takes 1 9 and 1 10. And you are just outnumbered, aren't you? And the agility of the 8s around that little track is always going to make it difficult. But it is a great one to win. It was always on my bucket list for sure. And again, it was a bit like Map Open for me. I started trying to win it in 1997. I won the fastest junior on grass in 1989. I started trying to win it in 1997, and I never won it till 2007, and I've never won it since.
Right.
So it's a really, and if you consider the years I was in Class 8, I had the pickings. You know what I mean? It really, it should have always, in my eyes, always come to a Class 8. And it has many years. It's not been me. So moving on from the V8 Busa, basically sold the kit, started over. Right, nobody's running an LS Chevy in Class 7. Why don't we do that? Let's not have 2 Hayabusas or a V8 or 2 Gixxers, because they was becoming fashionable again, all over again, like Grassing does.
Yeah.
And you went for the LS.
Yeah.
So what year was that? What was your first year with the LS?
In 2022.
So 22, brand new car again.
Brand new car again.
New chassis, new motor, new transmission.
Yeah.
Started off with that. Tell us a little bit about that.
That car literally hit the ground running. That was fast from the off. A little bit of a monster to handle, but in its ill handling at the start, it was still so fast.
Yeah.
So basically, it didn't go around the corner that quick, but God, it could trap.
She used to exit.
She was, it was so fast down the straight. So it made up for that, yeah. And by the time we fine-tuned that car, that was so good, that car, the first one.
So that's a 6 litre.
6.2, yeah.
Yeah, so a 6.litre Chevrolet V8 LS from America, crate motor. And they would be out of, essentially, in modern terms, they're like in Corvettes, modern Corvettes and all that sort of stuff. The ZR one was a bit different because I think that was supercharged.
Yeah, Camaro, I think they're in them.
Camaros.
Yeah.
So they're in them like, all of their sort of, if you like to call them American supercars.
And some SUVs.
Tanks and SUVs, yeah. And some motorhomes.
Yeah.
But they was 6.2 litre, what, like 500 horsepower?
Yeah, 500 horsepower, yeah. Yeah, easy 500 horsepower.
Yeah. And then everything on it ancillary-wise, basically stock intake, all that sort of stuff.
Stock intake, yeah. We did some mods with pistons and rods, not for power, just to rev it.
Yeah.
Modded the crank a little bit, different sump. But that was it, not like reinventing the wheel. Just
out of interest, we've already discussed this in a previous interview with an LS guy, and when we asked him about his like RPMs, he was a little bit coy, but he said it's more than 8. Was you revving yours more than 8?
About 8.
Okay. Oh, so you're on the same page.
Yeah.
Because we were curious, we were discussing start gears and the amount of miles an hour. It was all a discussion actually about tyres,
right?
Because obviously we are seeing, and this is no fault of the tyres or the tyre manufacturer. We're doing things with these tyres that they are just not.
Okay, but
I don't think there's a tyre in the world that is designed to do 100 mile an hour standing start on dirt.
No,
and we were discussing RPMs of launch and all that. But he was being a little bit coy, so I was just checking his facts. So you hit the ground running with the LS car. Yes, it was cool out the box. The irony was the LS car looked a lot like the second generation of the V8 Busa car. The engine was low COG. It was right over on the right tyre. So obviously there was some learning done throughout the processes of the other car.
Yeah.
But you'd changed configuration and gone in front of the drive axle, whereas the V8 car was fully rear engine. Again, just kind of explain this technically. Because the V8 Hayabusa was mounted on a transverse gearbox, the gearbox had actually been rotated upside down and the driveline was in front of the motor. Because it was only 84 kilo motor, it meant you could run the engine rear engined as opposed to mid-engined, if you like. But then you then have the sort of rotational forces where you've got the cranks rotating the right way, but then you've got the drive up the transmission. So when the pinion drives up the crown wheel, when the engine's behind, it actually drives up the gearbox and it generates a little bit of almost anti-squat. So it stops it pulling wheelies. What you've done with the LS, still the same configuration, transversed across the back, but the gearbox is rotated back onto the back. So now the engine's in front, mid-engine, should we call it?
Yeah.
But now you've got the added mechanical traction by virtue of the fact it's now pulling down on the... So now it wants to pull a wheelie.
Yeah.
So the engine wants to go at the ground. So now you've got this 600 horsepower monster with less rear percentage.
Yeah.
Small differences, isn't it? But less rear percentage. But then you've made up the rear percentages by removing all the ancillaries from in front of the engine and stuck them in the back of the pickup.
Yeah.
So everything's...
Yeah.
So couple of seasons with LS, 2 versions of that car?
Yeah, 2 versions of it. One of the second car was very similar to the first car. I'm not really sure it was ever as good as the first car. But yeah, very, very similar. 2 cars, very similar.
Yeah, I had this once with one of my own cars, and all I actually did was a winter rebuild. And I had a car that was dominant, and I stripped it and rebuilt it, and it was never the same.
Yeah.
And when I say we had it perfect, I mean we had photographs. We had every washer, every thread, every nut bolt was the same. And it just never performed again.
Yeah.
It had to go.
Yeah.
We ostracized it.
Yeah.
We sent it to the Midland League like you did with yours. And we never saw it again till, well, we did. It starred in a video doing donuts somewhere, but that's about how it handled for me too.
Yeah.
So then we move on from the LS car. We win another couple of titles, of course.
Yeah, I did 2 BAS titles in that back to back, innit?
Yeah.
And 1 nationals in it.
And the nationals.
Yeah.
And it was, it was ridiculous to watch. I mean, the thing was just awesome, and you could see that when if you needed it, you only had to just tread in it, and it would just go.
Yeah,
So then you did a good couple of years of development work.
Yeah.
Got it working to the point where I'm going to say it was dominant.
Yeah.
A couple of others jumped on the bandwagon. So now there's replicas of your car, not replicas as in copies, exact replicas.
Yeah.
Built by the same manufacturer, identical. Is that fair to say?
Same gearing, same wiring.
Same engine builder.
Some of them had the same engine builder, yeah. Yeah.
So you decide,
I'm off.
bollocks to this, sell the lot,
Yeah.
and let's do something new.
Yeah.
So where are we now?
Now we're 4-cylinder turbo. So 1 million miles away.
So we are night and day.
Night and day.
So we've gone from a naturally aspirated 6.2 V8 offset firing big bang tire shredding monster
Yeah.
to a 4-cylinder, a conventional 4-cylinder Ford
2.3.
2.3
Yeah.
with a turbo,
With a turbo.
still transversed.
Yeah.
So is this mid-engined or is this rear-engined?
This is mid-engine.
So
Again,
same as the LS.
Same as the LS, yeah. Yeah.
Where does that, without you giving too much away, where does that weigh up in a percentage term? So let's say, for the people at home, our cars tend to run around, let's generalize, at 70% rear weight. So 30%
Yeah.
is a roundabout figure for a special or a saloon, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, we're adjustable now. We can move the wheels backwards and forwards. So we can up and we have a ballast allowance, don't we, of 15 kilos.
Yeah.
So this car's obviously got a small, what I would consider to be a smaller, lighter engine mounted in the same place. So where are you percentage-wise? Only a differential. Don't have to give us a figure.
Yeah, it's not a lot different.
Okay.
It's probably 0.5%.
Okay.
It's not a lot because there's still quite a bit of ancillaries behind the motor.
Yeah.
And to be totally honest with you, we couldn't put that engine behind because of the new gearbox that's on it. So we was tied to that setup anyway.
So the basically the hole centers from where your input shaft goes in and your output shaft comes out prevented you from putting it rear engine.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you've hung a load of gear out the back. Obviously, you've got turbos and manifolds on there that'll weigh a hunk compared to a normally aspirated manifold.
Yeah.
And then you've got plenums, pipework, intercooler, charge cooler.
Yeah, well, it's intercooler at the minute, but it's going to be charge cooler for next year.
Yeah. So water cooled, so you're another 5 kilos.
Yeah,
So you're still ramping the weight in the back.
Yeah.
But I think the most significant thing here was a change of chassis manufacturer.
Yeah.
So you'd been under the XC Works banner.
Yeah.
Basically racing out of Devon, or the mighty Goxhill, the centre of the world. But the chassis was manufactured down there. You'd been running that with John for 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years. Yeah.
What made you make that move? Now, obviously, again, for the people at home, the car manufacturers, there's currently 5 or 6 chassis manufacturers. There was a chassis manufacturer formed in about 2007, roughly, and they were called Xtreme Race Cars.
Yeah.
Xtreme Race Cars was a guy called Russ Shepherd, a great friend of mine and a great competitor, current Class 8 British champion, and a guy called John Gay. They was buddies. They partnered up, started building cars. Don't know the politics of it, but a few years later they separated.
Yeah.
Russ became the Xtreme Race Car and John became XC Works.
Yeah.
So you stayed with John.
Yeah.
Or been with John.
Yeah.
Apart from the couple of years with me.
Yeah.
You was with John.
Yeah.
So you stayed with John for 10 years and then you've jumped ship and gone to his ex-partner.
Yeah.
For the 2025 season and beyond.
Yeah.
So what brought that move?
Just, I wanted to change engine setup and I just thought I want to change the chassis and get away from everybody else, get away from the Chevys, all the XC Work Chevys, just try and stand alone away from them a little bit.
Yeah.
And Russ just seems to make cars a bit more personal for you,
a bit more
rather than one-off, rather than just replicating a good car, which is nothing wrong with doing that, but I just didn't want to be in the same as everybody else, basically.
Yeah, and I suppose after the Hayabusa twin pickup, that was copied, I know modified, but essentially that was the most commonplace Class 7 effectively. The XC Works Twin Hayabusa is a very, very, very good car.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
So you jump ship, go to the V8 Busa. There's only a couple of three of them, and two of them were yours.
Yeah, yeah.
You go to the Chevy, and then they almost become production.
Yeah.
So you move on and you go elsewhere. So your car is a complete one-off. There's not another one.
Mine's
like
a one-off at the minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So this year, I know you was late starting the season with it.
Yeah.
So you had the rat rod at the start of the year.
Yeah.
So the little twin
Old
Gixxer
faithful.
car. Yeah. So you went all the way back to 2010, raced a pair of old Gixxers, but actually you was having good fun doing that. It looked fun.
Yeah.
Then the other car was just a little bit late, not actually the fault of the constructor as such, just gearbox.
Yeah. There was just a lot of bespoke stuff on it that we had to wait for.
So you got that just in time for Bass Round 2, I believe?
2, yeah, North Shropshire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First race, first corner, Bass Round 2. Never sat in it, never driven it, never raced it. Tell us.
Yeah, nearly upside down.
Very nearly upside down.
Yeah, it did gate, to be fair. But I'd already had a bit of a bounce on it and stuff because I'd only just got it a couple of days before and I thought it was a bit soft.
Yeah.
It was soft.
Yeah.
And when it dug in, it nearly went over.
Yeah, she was James Bond for a moment.
She was, yeah.
So you survived that, got through its first weekend, learnt a little bit.
Yeah, learnt a lot. Stuff with temperatures.
Coolant or intake?
Both.
Yeah.
Both, but at the time was obviously just back into data logging, so it was quite hard to read the data to put your finger on exactly what was going on with it.
Yeah.
So the couple of weekends we got on that more and started to realise what was going on with it.
So again, guys, for those of you that don't have a technical insight, on a forced induction car like Andy's that's running a turbocharger, obviously you've got options on forced induction. You can supercharge or you can turbocharge. The supercharger is a compressor driven by the engine, tends to deliver quite linear, a chunk of weight, a lot of components. The turbo is driven by exhaust gas pressure, effectively. Spins up the turbo, generates compressed air, forces it back down the intake. The Achilles heel of a force induct engine is intake temps.
Yeah.
So you've got your coolant temperature, which is your actual engine core temperature of your water, if you're from Lincolnshire.
Yeah.
But then you've got the air going into the intake that the engine needs to be fresh and cold to make the fuel mixture correct so that you can burn everything at the right temperature.
Yeah.
And when the intake temp is too high, that normally results in plug tips melting off, pistons melting, and or worse, big detonation.
Yeah.
Detonation, and I don't mean like detonation, I mean like melting the pistons, blowing the front of the liners out, or head gasket, detonation, that sort of thing. So you were suffering with intake temp issues first time out.
And water temp.
Oh, and coolant.
Yeah, both. Yeah, coolant and intake. Yeah.
So you only got a short distance then. You've only got a bit of a scramble to the next Bass round. So what countermeasures could you put in place in that time period?
I can't think what the next Bass round was after that. But literally, it went back down to Russ. We went with a different water radiator, and made some mods to the intercooler for the intake temperatures.
Yeah.
And that made it better, but we carried more weight again because we went up on the radiator size.
Yeah, the radiator was a chunk.
We had to go back into a big rad. But it did. I'm not going to say it fixed it because it never fixed it, but it made it better.
Yeah. So that's obviously part of your winter plan.
Yeah.
Water cooling, instead of going to the air intercooler that's cooling the air into the engine by just using the minimal airflow that we get in an Autograss car, because basically we're going sideways at a million revs. And everybody thinks we're going sideways, but we're going forward sideways, aren't we? But you don't get much airflow. So you're going to do basically a water-cooled intercooler, charge cooler, and then you're going to have a separate coolant system.
Yeah.
And you're going to pump water around that, electronically?
Yeah, electronically, yeah. Yeah, and probably an ice bath in it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so ice bath. And I know other guys use water meth.
Yeah.
So the water meth injection on the sort of chargers that bolt on the head, when you've got nowhere to charge cool because you're direct to head, you can water meth inject and you can, get a bit of temperature down. So what you'd do there, guys, you'd have a mixture of water and methanol in a little tank.
Yeah.
and you fuel inject that directly into the intake, and that'll knock 10 degrees off if you know. But you really need to be that intake temp. If you can't get it in the 30s, she ain't going to live.
No.
You know, that's the sort of rule of thumb. And you'll have defaults, I imagine, built in the ECU.
That was a problem, and that was why we were struggling with the data log to see what was going on, because the car kept turning off.
Right. So it doesn't even limp mode.
At that point, it wasn't limp mode, and it was turning off. We've had it altered since then, but yeah, when it first come out, it was all new, and the thing's just turning off, and you don't know why.
I remember my first year with the V8 Hayabusa, and it used to limp mode to a halt. So it would limp mode, slow, a bit slower, and then eventually it would stop. As soon as we found out which sensors was causing that limp mode, they became unplugged. And we used to have to plug them in to warm it up because it wouldn't start, then disconnect them to race it. And I used to literally drive it to the start line and then unplug the sensor. Otherwise, and obviously that's why ours was a testing program. And we had got the car packaged so tiny and so tight. I didn't have room for a radiator. And actually, one of the biggest problems on that was we were circulating the water too fast at 11,000 RPMs on a gear-driven water pump. What we ended up doing, we took the mechanical water pump, went to an electric water pump, and we put a restrictor in the water system and actually held it in the radiator longer. And that was the sticking plaster, if you like.
And a socket at that.
So you've got changes you're making into next year. You've got your oldest boy, Troy. He's got his own Class 7 now, but he's over away working in Ireland. So we're not seeing too much of Troy. Is the plans for Troy for next year?
He's going to race it more. We're going to do some mods to the car, take a bit more weight out of it. It's a light car anyway. But we're going to do them at home, probably me and him, just a bit of bonding time and work on it. And he's going to try and
that bonding time is going to last about 10 minutes.
Try
and burn him in that 10-minute window.
Then Mike can come in and finish it off.
Sort it, so, then we've got Mighty Max. He's now left the junior specials. We are going to be talking to Max fairly soon, because when we went back to, if we go back to the original Talking Dirty thing where we started with our social media content back in 2020, winter of 20, Max was one of the stars of our junior show, our first ever junior show. And all of those kids now have progressed into adult racing. Max has already left and he's racing in Class 9. What's the plans for him?
He's done a season now, so he's done his learning season. Probably started off really good, dackered off a bit towards the end, but obviously...
Are you going to allow him back on billet wheels for next year, or...?
I don't think so, no.
We'll leave him on battle rims.
Yeah, I don't think he's at that point yet. But no, we're gonna fresh the car up a bit, because we haven't done anything to it.
It's just as it got it.
Just have a year learning it. So we're going to have a winter and freshen it up, do the motor, and he can go again, yeah.
So one last little thing, we talked to everybody about this type of thing. First of all, there's two things we want to talk about. Dan Johnson, right? Dan's come along, he's a bit of a threat and this, that and the other. But are you aware of how the level he's gone to in this off-season to find performance?
Yeah, I think he's putting in, there's a few of us that put in a lot of time behind the scenes.
But did you know that he's been going around barber shops, right? He's been to Banbury, Goxhill, Warrington, Rayder, sweeping up the hairs out of barber shops from Cameron Mills. Yours sounds a bit psycho, this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does a bit.
He's been to Warrington and he's been to Tom Harris's barber, right? And Tom ain't got that much hair. And he's had it transplanted to make him faster. And I checked that with him earlier, and that's actually true.
Is he going to wear that open top helmet?
Yeah.
So you can see it?
Yeah. I couldn't get a true indication of him whether he's had it transplanted for performance or to get rid of the gingerness. He wasn't really clear on that. And then the one last thing, you came back to Grassham in its heyday, I think.
Yeah.
The Nationals you chose to watch, your first one, 2010 Severn Valley, arguably one of the best tracks ever. That Nationals final had 2 or 3 or 4 runs.
Yeah.
Multiple leaders, single engine car to the front, Volvo engine car to the front.
Yeah.
Another twin engine car to the front, then a single engine car to the front. Eventually it was won by the latter of the single engine cars, John Gay won it in the little SC100 in the Whiz Kid.
Yeah.
And he hadn't really fared in the early. Well, he had, apart from the one where Mark ran over him.
Yeah.
Since then, you've established yourself among all of them guys. Some are no longer with us, sadly. Some are still busy racing. Some have just retired. Who's your guy in the sport? When you go, he's the guy. He's the guy I'd like to emulate. He's the one I'd like to follow. He's the guy I'd like to be like. Is there a guy?
Probably not really. I think Sparky stood out for me when I first watched.
So Mark Griffiths.
Yeah. John Gay, obviously, at the time was very good. Probably Billy as well. But they was probably all big names that stood out.
And you couldn't meet actually 3 different characters.
No.
I mean, if you put them 3 together, you'd have a fucking nightmare, wouldn't you? But you've got 3 very, very, very different characters there.
Yeah.
Billy being boisterous and leaking natural talent. I mean, just could just drive the wheels off a shopping trolley.
Yeah.
Mark, methodical with an element of kill.
Yeah.
And John, as a driver, a very, very humble guy. Like, didn't want the contact, didn't like the body damage, didn't like the antics, just liked to go about his business, and actually quite unassumingly went about his business. And a multiple national champion over a couple of classes as well.
Yeah. I think because I'd not been watching so much previous to me coming into the sport, I didn't really have a massive person to follow kind of thing. I was too busy on the stadiums, really.
Yeah.
So when I did arrive, I only knew a few faces. Didn't know a lot of people at all, really. Yes, I've been involved in the early days, but not so much. Apart from my dad, I'm not looking at really anybody else. So yeah.
I mean, it's always if your dad's your hero, there's nothing wrong with that.
No, he's quite cool.
He still is. Yeah. And you'd still be knackered without him.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you very much for your time, mate. It's great to talk to you again. Obviously, we spoke multiple times before.
Yeah.
This is our new thing.
Yeah.
We want to carry this on into next year. As everyone else that's visited already, I'd just like to ask you guys at home, don't forget to like and subscribe. Put your questions down in the comments box. We can ask those questions for you, whether it be directly to Andy and get you an answer later, or just questions for later. Anybody you'd like to see, any guests you'd like to see on the show, drop them a line, talk them into it. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Andy, again.
No bother.
And hopefully we'll see you all soon. And it's a long winter. Hopefully this entertainment that we're trying to put together here is going to make that winter just feel a little bit shorter for everyone. Thank you.